Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I finally got to Expert and I did it in Jungle Cup, and today I am going to share those battles with you guys. Now really quickly, before I get into Jungle Cup, there is a team that got me most of the way there. It is an Open Great League team. It's the one you're seeing on the screen right now. I only managed to record like one battle of me using that team yesterday, and then when I started recording, I was actually thinking yesterday in Open Great League that this team was what was going to get me to Expert. But what I didn't realize was I had played all my sets and I ran out of games. So just for reference, the team I was using in Open Great League was Mantine lead with Hypno and Whiscash in the back. And I was using Hypno with Thunder Punch and Ice Punch. It was doing really well against a lot of the Pokemon I was seeing in the meta. And I ended up climbing from the really low 2500s to the mid 2700s in one day. Once Open Great League ended, I was at the mercy of Jungle Cup, and I was only one set away from Expert. I needed 1-3-2 to get there. But unfortunately, after Great League ended, and I tried Jungle Cup, the first set I played, I lost. I also lost the one after, and I lost the one after that. So I ended up dropping quite a bit. I dropped to 2690. But you guys know me, I am not one to give up that easily, and I actually learned a lot from my losses. I got a feel for the meta and I tried a bunch of teams. I figured out what works and what doesn't, and then it helped me build a very solid, very strong team that I'm going to share with you guys today. And this team, not only did it help me get to Expert, but it also helped me get really close to the 2900s. I played a bunch of games after I hit Expert. I wasn't recording, unfortunately, but I managed to get so many wins with the team. It's insane how consistent this team is. So I highly recommend it. The team is going to be Shadow Dragonite on the lead with Vigoroth, Safe Swap, and Mantine in the back. I know the team is very meta and not that interesting, but I tried to make a few spice picks work before, but in the end, I just wanted to climb. I wanted to use something that was going to help me get there, and this just got the job done. So before I get into the battles, I want to go over some leads and how I handle them with you guys. So, for fairy leads, you swap into Vigoroth immediately. Even if it's Whimsicott, Vigoroth can still hit for neutral with the body slams, and also, with the counter damage, it takes 2 body slams to take the Whimsicott out because of how squishy Whimsicott is. Also, Wigglytuff, the other fairy type in this meta, is going to be taking neutral from the counters. Now, for Skarmory lead is a little bit tricky, but you want to swap immediately into Vigoroth as well. What your opponent is going to try to do usually with Skarmory lead is they will stay in and they will try to throw a move on Vigoroth. That way they can either take a shield from you or they will get you low. So what you want to do is you're going to go for that Rock Slide immediately. Your opponent usually isn't going to try to catch the Rock Slide. That's what I've seen so far. And you can get that Skarmory low. You want to get that Skarmory low because once the Skarmory is in the yellow, then your Dragonite has a better matchup against it. And keep in mind, Skarmory gets to a move in 8 Steel Wings. You get to the Rock Slide in 7 counters. So throw that Rock Slide immediately. Usually I like to see and make sure that my opponent does that 8th Steel Wing before I throw the Rock Slide. But definitely go for it, because once the Skarmory is in the yellow, then both Mantine and Dragonite are going to have a much better matchup against it. Alright, now another tricky lead is Steelix. For Steelix, I will swap immediately into Mantine. You'll notice I have that Water Pulse on Mantine, and that is because Mantine will actually have a really good matchup against Steelix with Water Pulse. Now the reason I bring in Mantine is because usually a Steelix lead will be prepared for a Vigoroth Safe Swap. They won't be prepared for a Mantine Safe Swap, and what I noticed was a lot of Steelix leads will not have Lantern in the back. If they have Lantern in the back, then they are ABA weak to ground types. If you see an Abomasnow lead, you swap into Vigoroth, and that's because a lot of Abomasnow leads are going to have a Lantern in the back. So, you swap in Mantine, you just draw out the Lantern. You don't want to do that. For Dragon leads, you just stay in with Dragonite and you try to do as much damage to that Dragon type as you can. Usually I don't like to invest any shields in that matchup because once I get the Dragon out of the way, Vigoroth and Mantine with shields can usually do pretty well. Also, you can try to take a shield with a Dragon Claw against another Dragon type. Now, for every other lead, you double shield Dragonite and you try to win that lead. Usually, you can either take a shield from your opponent, of course you will be 2 shields down, but you will have a decently healthy Dragonite. Your Dragonite will usually be able to reach another move on whatever your opponent is going to bring in from the back. And you will also have alignment if your opponent is running an RPS backline. So, win lead with Dragonites, and then hopefully your backline should be able to take care of the rest. It can get a little bit tricky going all shields down for your backline, but if you get a little bit creative, make some catches here and there and distribute the damage onto your back 2 Pokemon, then you can really make this strategy work out for you. Alright, I've been talking for 5 minutes and I haven't showed you guys any battles. Let's get into these matches. Up first, as I told you guys, I like to double shield my Dragonite against any lead that isn't a hard counter to it. We got a Clodsire lead, I double shielded, I also managed to take a shield from my opponent, and then my opponent brings in an Abomasnow. I'm able to also reach a superpower on the Abomasnow and take my opponent's final shield, and then I swap out into my Vigoroth because I don't want the Abomasnow to farm my Dragonite down. My Dragonite came out of the Clodsire match decently healthy, and I was able to reach another move on one of my opponent's back Pokemon, as I mentioned earlier. Now my opponent is going to have that Vigoroth in the back. I did bring in Dragonite to take a Body Slam because I don't want to take 2 Rock Slides on my Mantine. I can then bring in Mantine and go for a farm down on the Vigoroth and have 2 Aerial Aces for the Abomasnow and take the Abomasnow out. GG's to our opponent. Moving on to the next battle, my opponent is going to lead a Mantine. Now I am going to go against what I said earlier where I double shield my Dragonite because my opponent only built up to the Aerial Ace. I know I can take this and live it, and I should be able to go for a Dragon Claw on the Mantine and get it low. However, my opponent shields, and if they commit to a farm down, I'll be able to reach another Dragon Claw. So we're able to take both shields from our opponent. So I'm in a really good position right now. I have 2 shields left for 2 very decent Pokemon for the meta. I have Mantine and Vigoroth left. So I'm going to bring Mantine in against theirs, and I managed to build up a lot of energy. I do shield one of their Ice Beams because I was getting pretty low and I wanted to preserve some health on my Mantine. And my opponent brings in a Vigoroth against Mantine, and because they brought the Vigoroth against it, I started thinking that my opponent might have a Water and Ground type in the back. So I wanted to preserve the Mantine. I swap out into my own Vigoroth, and it looks like I was correct. My opponent is going to have a Shadow Whiscash in the back. I decided to shield my Vigoroth because I know that I can get their Whiscash low, but it looks like I am also going to be able to take their Whiscash out completely with my Vigoroth, and then I can go for a Body Slam on their Vigoroth and take that win. GG's to our opponent. Moving on to the next match, we are going to see probably the trickiest lead this team can see. It is going to be Altaria. As I said, against Dragon types, you just stay in and you try to do as much damage as you can. If you can get a shield with a Dragon Claw, go for it. Of course, we were able to take a shield from our opponent with our Dragon Claw, and then they are going to be able to completely farm our Dragonite down. Now, I am able to bring Mantine in and go for a full wing attack down on the Altaria. I went ahead and I shielded the Sky Attack as well. But usually the Altaria will live the Dragonite matchup with yellow health. In this instance, I think the Altaria might have had bad IVs, and usually they can get to a second move on the Mantine. But we were able to wing attack them down, have a lot of energy for whatever my opponent is going to have in the back. They had a Steelix, and I bet they weren't expecting that Water Pulse because it did so much damage. Now my opponent is going to go ahead and top left because I had a lot of energy on my Mantine. They had no shields left, and I was going to be able to take their Steelix out with a Water Pulse. Alright, now next match we do see that Skarmory on the lead. I'm immediately going to swap into Vigoroth and go for that Rock Slide before my opponent can throw a move. Of course they're staying in because they want to take a shield from us or they want to get our Vigoroth low. They go for a Sky Attack and they are going to swap into an Altaria. This is going to get really tricky. I don't think I win this match, we'll see. But I go for that Rock Slide. I probably should have baited because I was definitely expecting my opponent to shield. They had 2 shields left. Why not? They should definitely use it on that Rock Slide. However, it looks like my opponent is going to commit to a farm down, so I am able to get 2 Body Slams off on this Altaria. Now, I don't want to bring my Dragonite in against the Altaria, so I do bring my Mantine, and I'm going to go ahead and no shield whatever they're going to throw. They end up throwing a Sky Attack and a Moonblast, and unfortunately that means I am going to be left with a really low health Mantine. I didn't want to invest a shield in that match because I want to save my shield for my Dragonite. I know that because I got the Skarmory into the yellow, my Dragonite should be able to win that matchup. Now, unfortunately, I do something really stupid here, and I let my opponent get to an Aqua Tail. They are going to be able to take our Dragonite out, and I had so much energy. If I had thrown that Dragon Claw, I would have been able to take the Quagsire out with an Aerial Ace from my Mantine, or maybe I would have been able to farm it down, and then I could have had a Water Pulse for the Skarmory and taken that win. So I lose this because of my own mistake. I was expecting my opponent to go up to 5 Mudshots, but of course, in this meta, it is recommended for the Quagsire to run Aqua Tail, and Aqua Tail is going to be 4 Mudshots. So I made a big mistake there. I really could have had that win. Moving on to the next game, my opponent led Talonflame and they immediately swapped into a Vigoroth. Now what I did was, I stayed in with Dragonite a little bit, did some Dragon Breath damage, and then I attempted to catch the Body Slam on my Mantine. I didn't want to swap in Mantine immediately because the matchup can start to get quite dicey with Vigoroth having access to that Rock Slide. So I caught the Body Slam on Mantine so that my opponent would be Energy Dry, and that means they would need another 7 counters to get through the Rock Slide. I was able to take my opponent out with a Water Pulse and also build up extra energy so that I could have energy to throw at the Talonflame. I was able to take both shields from the Talonflame because I saw that I have access to that Water Pulse, and then now I am going to bring my Dragonite in against his Talonflame and go for a Dragon Claw, really hoping this KOs. Does it KO? It's enough to take the Talonflame out. My opponent is going to have an Abomasnow in the back. I had a little bit of residual energy left on my Dragonite, so I was able to get to the superpower and take the Abomasnow out. GG's to our opponent. And with that win, we are going to have a 4-1 in that set. It is going to put me super, super close to Expert. I just need 1-3-2, one more positive set. Moving on to the next game, we are going to see a really nice lead of Whiscash. Now my opponent is immediately going to swap into a Vigoroth. I decide here that I want to stay in this matchup and double shield my Dragonite. I know that I can win this, and I have an even better answer to Whiscash in the back, and that is going to be Mantine. Mantine is absolutely going to wall Whiscash. So I'm going to go ahead and double shield my Dragonite. I also managed to take a shield from their Vigoroth, and I have a ton of energy built up. My opponent has a Shadow Skarmory in the back. I'm going to go for a superpower, and they no-shield it. This is going to be so good for me. I also managed to reach a Dragon Claw on the Skarmory. We get it into the red. Now I can bring in my Vigoroth and go for the counters on the Skarmory. They saw that, and they immediately swapped into Whiscash, and of course, I'm going to have the wall in the back. Once they see the Mantine, they immediately top left. GG's to our opponent. Actually, if my opponent had shielded that superpower, they might have had a chance to destroy my entire backline, especially since I had no shields left and they had a Shadow Skarmory. Now, moving on to the next match, we are going to be met with a Steelix on the lead. I swap immediately into my Mantine, and they throw a Psychic Fangs and then they swap into their Vigoroth. Now, I mess up here big time because I can flip the switch, but I no-shield the Rock Slide. I really thought my opponent was going to go for a bait. Unfortunately, they go for that Rock Slide and they take our Mantine out. I also let the Rock Slide go on my Dragonite. I don't know what I'm doing here. I just gave up at this point. There is no way I'm going to win this match now. So, yeah, we're just going to have our Vigoroth up against the Steelix. Gonna go for these Body Slams, but I should really top left because I do not have a chance anymore. I do get Steelix leads in other matches that I play, and I handle them so much better. So unfortunately, in this video, I think we just have this really bad example. I mean, what am I still doing? Can I please top left? Please? Yes, thank you. All right, moving on to the next game. Sometimes I look at my potato plays and I wonder, how did I ever climb? Anyways, in the next match, we are going to see a Stunfisk lead. This is also one of those leads that I like to double shield against. I am going to let the first discharge go because they're running Mudshot. They don't have any fast move pressure, so I'm okay with taking that damage from the electric type move. I am going to shield the second one, however. I know that they can't Mudshot our Dragonite down. My opponent is going to safe swap into a Greedent, and the Greedent is also going to be running Mudshot, so I go for that superpower, I take a shield from them, and then I swap into my Vigoroth. It looks like my opponent is going to be going for those Trailblazes to boost their attack, but Vigoroth is going to be applying a lot more fast move pressure on the Greedent because the counters are going to be doing super effective. We're able to take the Greedent out, but it also looked like my opponent started lagging there, so very unfortunate for them. My opponent is going to bring in a Vigoroth, and we're also able to get a Body Slam off on their Vigoroth. Now, I am going to bring my Mantine in against the Vigoroth. I'm going to go ahead and shield the first move, because if it is a Rock Slide, then my opponent would be able to take us out with a Body Slam if I let it land. My opponent tried to catch an Aerial Ace on their Stunfisk, but I called it. I immediately swapped into my Dragonite. I was able to Dragon Breath the Stunfisk down, and then I also Dragon Breathed the Vigoroth down, and we take that win. Moving on to the next match, we are going to be met with a Lantern. This is fine. This is where we want to see it. We just don't want this to align to our Mantine. Now, I'm just going to try to damage this as much as I can. I go for that first Dragon Claw and we get a shield from them. I'm going to go ahead and shield myself, and then I should be able to reach another Dragon Claw before my opponent can reach another Surf. I'm able to land the Dragon Claw, and now they are in the red, so I'm okay with letting my Dragonite go. I should be able to bring in Vigoroth here and counter the Lantern down. It's out of the way now, and I'm really hoping that with the Lantern out of the way, my Mantine is going to be able to sweep whatever my opponent has in the back. They are going to have a Vigoroth in the back, and because I had that little bit of energy lead on my Vigoroth, I am going to be able to reach 2 Body Slams before they can reach their second move. However, my opponent decides to shield their Vigoroth, and I didn't want them to farm me down, so I immediately brought in my Mantine. I was actually calling that they might have the Abomasnow in the back because they led the Lantern, and a lot of times the Lantern is going to be paired with an Abomasnow. Abomasnow is going to be doing very well against the ground types, the water and ground types, so that team composition made sense. I was correct. I was able to bring in the Mantine against the Abomasnow and take it out with the Aerial Aces, and then we were able to take that win. Moving on to the next match, we are going to be up against a fellow YouTuber, Chili's FM, and he is going to lead a Pelipper. He immediately swaps into Vigoroth, and I think I'm going to stay in this. I'm just going to go for a Dragon Claw on the Vigoroth, of course expecting my opponent to shield. They do shield, and I think I decide to stay in this. Yes, I'm just going to go ahead and double shield my Dragonite. I'm just hoping that my Mantine aligned to their Pelipper is going to be a good situation for me. Now my opponent is going to have, it looks like a Zweilous in the back. I am able to reach a Dragon Claw on the Zweilous, and my opponent lets it land. I guess they were calling that I had the Vigoroth in the back, so they decided that double shielded Pelipper might be the way for them to win. But I am going to have Mantine, and Mantine is going to outbulk Pelipper. We are going to be able to take that Hurricane very comfortably. I'm going to go for an Aerial Ace here. And then my opponent is going to be forced to throw the Hurricane here because a Weather Ball is not going to be enough to take me out. I was going to be able to reach that Aerial Ace. I will be able to reach a Body Slam, however they catch it on their Zweilous, but I should be able to counter the Pelipper down. A Weather Ball is not going to be enough to take our Vigoroth out, so our opponent is going to have to commit to that Hurricane. We're going to be able to take this win. And with that, we will get a 4-1 in this set, which will push us well over 2,700 ELO and straight into expert rank. And that is going to bring us to the end of our video. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys like my content, please consider subscribing. Maybe leave a like. It helps me out so much. Let me know if you use the team and if it works out for you. I really believe in this team. And I will see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye!